Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to be checking out how to create your own custom sight singing questions in Auralia. Auralia comes with hundreds of these questions already, covering everything from basic stepwise motion through to ornamentation and outlining chromatic chords. But if you'd like to create your own, this is how you do it. So as far as the sight singing questions in the programs, these are, within the library, these are all manually assessed questions. They give you lots and lots of flexibility in the types of questions that you can deliver to your students. So if you have materials that you've perhaps already created in Sibelius or somewhere else, you can easily export them from there and import them in. I largely use Sibelius here, and every program's a bit different, but basically I can just go File menu, export as music XML, and you can choose either of these formats, and then you can just simply export the file. So you should be able to do that out of Finale, MuseScore, Noteflight, and so on. I should point out we are not, Auralia Musician are not a fully fledged notation program, so we will not support everything those programs do. But as far as getting existing materials across into Auralia Musician, can be really, really useful way to manage it. Okay, so you will see now I am in the library here in Auralia, and to bring in my own materials, I can simply go to the plus icon here, and I can import my files. So here's the melody, a little melody set that I created earlier, and I'm just going to select that and bring it in. So aside from today's recording, we also have lots of training videos that cover all these features as well, so we can share those with you. Okay, so I'll import my notation file here. And one thing just worth knowing about is the tags here can be really useful. So if you're thinking these melodies might be really useful for a particular course or level of student, you can really easily create things in here. So I'm just going to throw in a Muse 101 tag here that we can search for later to find this piece of media if need be. Okay, so I brought this bit of notation in here. As I mentioned, I can search for it if I need to. Muse 101, whoops, once I type correctly. And there's my bit of notation there. If I need to look at this just to check what it is, I can always right click on there and just go edit notation. Now I've brought this in and kind of formatted it in a specific way for a few different reasons that we'll get to a little bit later. But essentially I have about 6 different melodies there, and I have SATB accompaniment down the bottom here, and then also the soprano and the bass part, just on separate grand staff here as well. But I'll demonstrate how that becomes handy shortly. Okay, so we brought our media in. The next step is to create our custom question. So this is all done over on the right here. The question area, I will select plus, new question, and like so. All right, there's a lot going on this dialogue, but once you get used to the workflow, it's actually quite simple, and it's really easy to replicate once you get used to kind of laying it out once. So first and foremost, we are going to choose to create a recording question up here on the top left, and we can give our question a name. I'm just going to call it, say, singing number 2, and over here in this section, we can define the instructions that the student will see. So we're going to say sing the displayed melody, and we could opt here to also say perhaps something like transpose the octave or the key as you need to fit your voice type. Okay, now you'll see here we have a few different recording or singing based question types. We're going to choose the top one to begin with. So we're going to sing or play the displayed work. And then we have to choose which piece of notation we'd like to use for that. So again, down here, I'm going to choose display, and I'm going to select notation here. And then click on the select button. and this will bring up our library. This is where before, as I mentioned, sometimes having tags can be really useful, especially if you have lots and lots of custom content in your library. There's also a favorite option, which I will show you shortly. All right, so I select my notation file, and this is where I choose which bits of the notation are visible to the student. So I'm just going to start off and use just the top melody for this particular question. And a really quick and easy way to basically hide everything else is up under this little drop-down menu here, as we can say, we just want the first part to be visible. And you'll see once I select that, everything else becomes grayed out and just our first part is visible there. I'm also going to hide the part labels because I won't be playing the flute for you today. Okay, so essentially here we have defined this is all the student is going to see for this question type. Now, one final thing we need to set here, just under starting, pitch and counting, we can choose the type of information we provide the student as a prompt as part of this question. So I'm going to choose to give the student a chord, and this particular excerpt is in B flat major. So I'm going to give the student a B flat major chord. You have another couple of options here as well, whether you would like a metronome to play whilst the student is singing. I'm going to turn that on for now, just to be generous and kind to my student. And I'm going to set the time of signature to 3/4 to match the notation, and also set a tempo of 75 beats per minute. Okay, so they are all the basic parameters of our question. If we'd like to preview it, we can simply select the little preview button here up in the top right. Okay, so here you can see we can play back the tonic chord, we can get a feel for the metronome marking, and we can actually start recording here as well. I'm actually going to do this question in a moment, assign it to a quick test, and we'll do that in the browser at auralia.cloud just to show you how this works. But let's jump out of here for now. As I mentioned before, the favorite kind of icon and button here can be a really useful way to tag, specific questions or bits of media that you love to use in your classes and courses. So I'm just going to hit the little star favorite button on that one up in the top right. Okay, great. So I've created my question here. Just before we move on to actually trying this question out in the browser, one thing I wanted to point out is that once you've created essentially a template question, it's really easy to then replicate that just using the copy question button. And then I can just double click on it to open this copy. And this is where, this is kind of part of the reason why I set up my notation the way I did. If I am creating kind of multiple questions within a similar type of format, I can then really easily just kind of update this question to then just use this second piece of notation instead of the first. So within seconds, I have a brand new question that uses the same basic question template, and also means that you don't have to spend hours creating more and more questions. Excuse me. Okay, so that's one quick way to do that. Another kind of variation on this question format, and again, I'm just going to create a quick copy here. Again, using the copy button, and I'm just going to rename this Sight Singing 3 with accompaniment. Okay, so in this case, rather than the top question type here, play or sing the displayed work, I'm going to select the second question type here, play or sing during playback. So what this allows us to do is to select a piece of notation or an audio file or even a YouTube video to play back whilst the student is singing, which can be great for vocals plus accompaniment, or say a counterpoint singing exercise, or against a drone. Lots of options there. So under the playback area here, I'm going to choose select and choose my little melody set. And again, using the little drop-down menu up here, I'm just going to initially start by turning all the parts off, so no parts are playable. And then I'm going to come down the bottom here and actually just turn on the piano accompaniment so we can listen to that back. And so on. Excuse me. Now, just before we move on, we will jump back into the starting pitch and count-in section here. And we're just going to set a little count in here for the student as well. You'll see that we can also then choose to enable a metronome. And this time we can just choose the playback notation as the basis for the tempo and the key and the time signature that is going to be used there. Okay, so then our question will end up looking and sounding like this. So this time when I hit start recording, I will be given my tonic. And I apologise for torturing you with my singing, but it's perhaps a good example of maybe what one of your students is where they're currently at. So I'm not going to listen to that back right now because we are going to do another question in the browser right now. But you have the option to enable these sorts of options so that students may or may not be able to actually, kind of listen back. Oh, A+, thank you, Samantha. Listen back before they actually submit their answer. So again, I can obviously create a copy of that question and combine any of those melodies with that accompaniment, or just the bass part with the melody as a kind of more of a two-part singing exercise, and everything in between. So lots of options there. Okay, so that is essentially how you create a singing question. What I'd like to do is just really quickly insert this into a test, so then we can just look at how the grading side of things works. Okay, so hopefully some, if not most of you, will have had a bit of a play with how to create a test, but if not, under the admin area here, we can simply jump into tests and create a new test just by hitting the plus button here, and I'm going to choose Auralia for my test. I will give it a name. Let's just call this week 2 singing, and 2 singing there. And groups are a really great way to just organize your tests into folders so you can easily find them. Choose one of the existing groups or add your own. I'm just going to add the singing group here. Now I'm going to allow up to 5 attempts for this student, for each student on this particular worksheet or test. And now I'm going to define the entries of this worksheet. And again, I'll just hit entries, which will bring me across to this page. And again, just hitting the plus button here, I can then choose the type of drill or entry I'd like to add. So we're going to add a library drill here, which means we can draw from the sight singing questions we have just created. Okay, so I've given it a name. We're going to ask one question, and again, we're going to search the library to find the question we want. Again, just by selecting that little plus icon there. As I mentioned before, this is where the favorites button can be really useful. So just by choosing favorites here, there's the question I created. I can select that, preview it if need be, or just select the tick button to add it to my worksheet. I have a few options. Playback, I can choose how many times the student can hear it playback if there is any playback associated with the question. In this case, there's not, but I'll just leave it as 3 anyway. I will turn start immediately off. And most of the other options here aren't particularly relevant for this question type. You may choose to override some of these options here, as I mentioned before, whether you allow students to review their answer before submitting it or not, and also the number of recording attempts they're allowed. So you can be as generous or as harsh here as you like. Okay, I will save that. And you can see over on the left here, I now have my sight singing question listed. I can add as many entries as I like to this worksheet or test, just so you know, so I can keep building upon that. Back to the test, and that should be all ready to go, apart from the fact that I haven't assigned it to any classes yet. So I'll just come down here and assign it to, I'll assign it actually just to my Year 7 Music 1 class, which I believe I am a member of. We will find out shortly. Great, so we've created our worksheet, and then this should then pop up over here under tasks for students that are a member of that class. So I should see this under singing, week 2. All right, I'll have another attempt at this question. Okay, so this is the monophonic version of this question. Ma la da da do da, oh ba la da da do da da. Okay, then I'll stop my recording. I have the answer, the option to listen back, which I won't do now. I will save that for the grading area, and I will submit that to my instructor. Excellent. So this will say grading pending. As you can see here, the student can, at this point, if you enable it on the test, jump in to actually review their work there as well. Okay, so now with my instructor hat on, I will jump into the admin area here, and let's have a quick look at what this test looks like and how we can kind of manually grade it. So under admin, we can go to grading, and automatically we can see my test pops up here on my worksheet. One thing to be just aware of really quickly is the status over here is essentially a filter that allows you to look at various worksheets in various ways. So anything that has already been manually graded, as well as items that have been automatically graded, or incomplete items as well. So they can be accessed really easily there. Needs grading will pop up by default. If you have lots of items that need grading, you can multi-select things as well. So if I had a whole bunch of worksheets there, I could simply check that box at the top there, and that would then select all the tests. And that can be useful if you just need to kind of step through them in sequence when you're marking items. Okay, so then I will select grade, and I can jump in here. You can see, I've only obviously had one question in this particular worksheet, but you can see that if I had multiple items, then they would all be listed here, and I can step through them. So first of all, down here I can see the student answer, and I can play this back. Monophonic version of this question. Ma la da da do da. Okay, I think that's enough for everyone. So in here then we can grade the question. So we can, I'm feeling generous, I'll give myself a 5. And under comments, I can then add a comment that is kind of visible to the student. Great work. And then I can add private comments just so you have a record of these, and this can be anything. These aren't revealed to the student. And again, no sense of pitch or vocal tone. And so you can document anything you want there just as a record, and then simply hit grade. And that is all recorded. You note that you can always come back and regrade items later. So once you exit there, come back in, you can regrade, and there's a little history kept of all the various, the grading history essentially as well. So if things do get reviewed, you can always, revisit them and see what's happened there. You'll see my feedback has also appeared here. Now, if you are doing other question types as well, it can be useful to see the question as it appeared for the student, and also feedback as it appeared for the student. So this might be more relevant for, say, a melodic dictation question or something like that, where you want to see the correct answer, exactly where the student went wrong, and perhaps compare the contour of what they entered versus, what they entered versus the correct answer, if you feel as though they need to receive some extra credit. Okay, so that is all submitted, and I can go back to my list, return and submit. And now you note that there are no longer any kind of remaining tasks available there under the needs grading status, and under graded, I should now see my week 2 singing item there and the grade that was entered. Hopefully that was really useful and you're excited about the types of custom sight singing questions you can create with Auralia. Please let us know if you have any questions, and feel free to comment, like and subscribe. See you next time.